Hello there. Since October 7th, a large amount of my free time has been spent focusing on the conflict between Israel and Hamas. From TikTok lives to books to articles, my attention has been grabbed by the events taking place thousands of miles away from me. I've always had a mild interest in the region, and I've supported Israel since my teenage years, though my perspective has changed a lot since I was a teenager. The vast majority of evangelicals support Israel. A Pew Research survey showed that it was about 86%, many due to a verse in Genesis, assuming that those who bless the Jews will be blessed by God. Another reason would have to do with eschatology. According to many evangelical end-time teachings, the restoration of the nation of Israel, Jerusalem being made a Jewish city, and the temple being rebuilt all must take place before the end of days. Now, for some reason, these Christians see that as a good thing, and they're hoping for it. I don't know about you, but even when I had premillennial beliefs, I was not happy about living in the end times. But, as it seems, a large number of young evangelicals are losing their support of Israel. The Jerusalem Post reported that support fell from 67% to 33% among young evangelicals. This, as well as my encounters with Palestinian Christians, has led me to making this video, because I feel every Christian should be a Zionist. Now, this is not to say that Christians in Israel are treated the way that I would want them to be treated. From spitting attacks to violence against priests. Apparently there's land seizures of the Armenian quarter. That doesn't sound good at all. Now, this is not to defend the way the government appears to treat Christians in Israel, according to those articles, or the way that some Jewish people may feel about Christians, or more importantly, how they treat us. There's been a lot of bad blood between the two groups, switching all the way back to the very founding of our religion. Jewish violence against Christians and Christian violence against Jews is well documented. We both share an ugly history. Both sides should agree that evil has been done. I mean, one side did a lot more evil, but let's just move on quickly. But if we take all those articles on their face as true, and we just assume there's no other reason besides Jewish hatred of Christians that have led to the spitting attacks and harassment, and let's exclude all the support Jewish Israelis have shown Christians, we should still consider the facts of the situation, and the facts of the region. Starting with Lebanon, which had a Christian majority as few as 30 years ago, and despite their population increasing, Christians make up about 1/3 of the population now, largely due to a civil war started by Palestinian Muslims. And since the decline and the rise of Hezbollah, Christians now find themselves being used as shields by the Islamist group. And with every day that ticks by, it looks more and more likely that Hezbollah and Israel will go at it, meaning Christians will find themselves in the middle of another war. Israel's neighbor to the south is also no friend to Christians, as persecution against Egyptian Copts range from being barred from holding certain positions in government to being denied jobs. But more importantly, violence against Christians is far too common, as well as the mass kidnapping, rape, and conversion of Christian girls. A tiny minority of Copt Christians are at a near constant threat due to Islamists. A Christian lawyer in Cairo had this to say: Coptic Christians do not share in equality of citizenship in Egypt. As a matter of law, Copts remain less than full citizens in the realm of church construction, religious discrimination, and religious conversion. Whether Copts will ever share in equality of citizenship in a legal and constitutional system in which the principles of Islamic Sharia serve as the main source of legislation is questionable at best. But as applied to Egyptian's current legal system, the answer is unequivocally no. There is a Christian charity that specializes in persecution of Christians, and they have a site that you should check out. On Open Door Sus, it lists Egypt's persecution of Christians as very high. Now to the east, it seems that Jordan is pretty chill with Christians, allowing them to freely worship, and the government even recognizes multiple churches. But they're less chill to converts, as apostates from Islam can face threats of death, beating, and have their legal rights made invalid, with Open Doors also listing them as having a very high persecution level. But what about in Gaza itself? Before the war started, Christians suffered under the rule of Hamas, as if it would come as a shock to any of us that a terrorist group would target Christians. Another hard read is, in Hamas-run Gaza, the last Arab Christians are hanging on. It tells the story of an owner of a Christian bookstore who was kidnapped, tortured, and murdered by extremists. Of course, Hamas condemned the attack and vowed to protect the Christians, but the assailants were never found. Kidnapping, torture, murder? That doesn't sound very Gazan. It seems that anywhere Islam controls, Christians are persecuted. A 60-year-old man in Gaza is now living in the streets of Nazareth, but says he prefers to stay there than to go back to Gaza? That's interesting. The number of Christians in Gaza has dwindled to just over 1,000, while the West Bank has close to 50,000, but the Christians in the West Bank are also not safe from persecution. Christian population has been decreasing all over the Middle East. Do I need to cover what ISIS did to religious minorities and what has happened in Syria and Iraq? Thousands of Yazidi girls were killed and sold off as sex slaves. In fact, if you look at every nation in the Middle East that is controlled by Islam, you can't find one that is friendly to Christians. In fact, Israel is the only nation in the Middle East where the Christian population is growing. It's the only nation in the Middle East that protects its minorities and doesn't make laws to keep them down. Religious freedom is a pillar of Western society, and Israel does a good job of upholding it. The reason every Christian should support Israel is because if Israel falls and the Jewish state collapses, in its place will be another Islamic one, and the Islamists will do what they have done and are currently doing in every place their putrid hand finds a hold on. They will destroy churches, they will persecute Christians, and they will rape women. This is what standing against Israel means, that you support these things happening. Even a neutral stance means something, as not to stand is to stand. Your attempt at sitting on a fence is all the Islamists need to seize power and control and enforce that same twisted ideology that has led to millions of deaths. We as Christians are called to make this world a better place, to spread the gospel, and to teach people to obey the words of Christ. In no world is His Great Commission easier accomplished under Islamic rule. You see, just because it's a Jewish state doesn't mean it's a theocracy. It's a Western, secular democracy. And under Western secular democracies, Christians have thrived. Our ideas have blossomed into some of the greatest things the world has ever seen. We are free to teach, lead, and convert as we see fit. We as Christians are allowed to travel to Israel and see some of our most important sites because of Western ideals. The West is at war, and our enemy is ancient and evil. It has held control over most of the Middle East for 1,000 years. But it is losing, and it will continue to lose. Israel is the tip of the spear in our fight against this enemy. And we will win. We will conquer. The God of Abraham is still in control. Christ is still king. And the people of Israel live.